maternal grandfather served as a Marine in World War II, starting at the age of 17. He went to the Pacific and transported troops and weapons across the seas to help defeat Japan. At some points they came upon traps such as mines in the water. They had to use their rifles to shoot and blow them up before the ship could safely pass through. At the end of the war, my grandfather was out at sea when they encountered a Japanese cruiser and a Japanese destroyer in the Pacific. My grandfather wrote this about the event. We were not sure that the Japanese knew the war was over. The tension was high and the wait was long. We were an unarmed ship and had little ability to defend ourselves. The two Japanese ships started to blink Morse code to each other and eventually to us. They were asking where to go to surrender. Eventually, B-19s started flying over. They were coming from Saipan and Tinian and were followed by B-29s. The Japanese ships turned toward Guam to surrender. Over the years, I had quizzed my grandfather on World War II facts, and he never got a single question wrong, probably because he had experienced it firsthand. After the war, my grandfather went to college on the GI Bill. He also went to UCLA graduate school and studied at Oxford and the Sorbonne in Paris. My grandfather was a great adventurer. He was a sailor and shipped out of Naples for quite a while. He eventually sailed around the world and almost died in the Pacific when his ship encountered a typhoon in 1961. My grandfather lived a good life and died on September 30th, 2012. I wrote a poem for his funeral called World War II Poem. My paternal grandmother was a well-known country western singer in the Midwest in the 60s. A big moment in my grandmother's career was when she got to sing on the Wheeling Jamborees, which was a weekly regional radio show featuring the top country acts of the day. My grandmother made a record which was very popular, regionally called When It Comes Right Down to Leavin'. Another big moment in her career was when her ex-husband, John, my grandpa, retired from the country western band he was leading. She quickly took his place and became very popular with the audiences and with the band members. Ironically, she began singing with the ex-husband of my grandpa's new wife. When my dad was a kid, he got to see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. Prior to seeing them, he thought they were acrobats and he was fascinated by the tricks he thought they could do. When my dad saw the Beatles and found out they were actually singers, he was very disappointed but happy and surprised at the same time. He got to listen to their music just when they started their American invasion. To this day, my dad loves the Beatles and constantly listens to their beautiful and unique songs. When my father was in first grade, he was sent home with all of his other classmates when the school announced that President Kennedy had been shot. For the next 4 days, my dad and his twin brother watched events on TV, including the murder of Lee Harvey Oswald and President Kennedy's funeral. My dad also watched Neil Armstrong land on the moon. My dad and his identical twin brother attended Ohio State and then moved to New York together to become actors. Because this required actual acting ability, it didn't work out and they were forced to go to law school in order to make a living. In college, my mother lived abroad in Padova, Italy, where she studied art and literature. She can read Dante's Divine Comedy in the original. She was living there when Chernobyl happened and watched the brown nuclear dust cloud blow over Italy. She returned to Italy after graduation from college and worked in Venice at the Peggy Guggenheim Museum on the Grand Canal. She was there the year that the Biennale and the Guggenheim hosted artist Jasper Johns. She also taught English at a Venetian liceo and sometimes translated for an Italian knight who owned the Monaco Hotel. She eventually ran UC's Education Abroad program at the University of Venice, where she had an office next to l'Aula Magna, a beautiful frescoed ballroom. While in law school, she went to live in London for a semester in 1990. She interned at Interrights, an international human rights office. There was an outbreak of mad cow disease while she lived there, but she was not affected. In 1990, she visited a friend in Dublin on the day that Mrs. Robinson was elected as the first female president of Ireland. She witnessed the crowd chanting, Manana Irie, which means Woman of Ireland. She also went to Berlin for the reunification of Germany and shipped off a piece of the Berlin Wall. Once she graduated from law school, my mom worked at the Supreme Court on a special project for Justice William Brennan. She ultimately became a death penalty lawyer because he reminded her that human rights abuses were happening here, in her own backyard. One of my mom's clients was executed in 2002. He asked her beforehand if lethal injection would be painful. She witnessed his execution and it did not go smoothly. In 2010, my mom was part of a team that stopped the execution of Albert Brown. This time, the challenge to the lethal injection process worked. My mom believes that where there is life, there is hope, and she believes La bellezza ci salverà.